Mr. Dahlbeck.
Present.
Mr. Husnick.
Here.
Mr. Munson is absent. Mr. Schmidt is here. Mr. Steeler.
Yes, present.
We have quorum.
Okay. Do we have a motion to, or are there any changes or additions to last month's minutes? And if not, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as written.
We have
I didn't see anything.
motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Dahlbeck seconds. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
It's 4 in favor. It passes.
Check.
Number 3 on the agenda, Bolton and Mink. Silas Parmar is here. Silas?
Well, thanks again for the time. I brought with me today Chris Gardner. He's an aviation planner with Bolton and Mank. As you guys know, last meeting we talked about MnDOT has greenlit the master plan update project. So Chris is going to be a big part of that project. So I figured now would be a good time to bring him here now that we have some projects to actually talk some turkey about with you guys that we've been working on for about a year here. So Chris will get in a little bit more once we start talking about the master plan. There's a presentation that's kind of included here that I believe will show up on your guys' screens. But first, being an engineer, I'd like to talk about the pavement rehab project, the fun stuff. So we just kind of kicked that project off after council last Monday kind of approved our proposals for both projects. So within your packet is kind of a construction safety and phasing plan. Essentially what that does is kind of lays out the work areas and what's going to be closed and what's going to be open during construction. You know, obviously we want to minimize the amount of closure to runway 1331. And with the nature of the project being a crack repair and a seal coat, it does necessitate a closure of the runway. So how we have it scheduled is for a 5 working day closure. So our hope is that it starts on a Monday morning and it ends on a Friday afternoon to complete the work on the runway and then on the south taxi lanes. This way, while construction is occurring, you know, in the hangar area, on the rest of taxiway A, and then even the entrance road and the parking lot, you know, aircraft can still come and go. There might be certain times where you might have to wait for kind of a seal coat to cure, but there's ways to work around that, and we'll make sure everyone's aware of the schedule. So if you are planning on taking off during the times of construction happening in the hangar taxi lanes, you can tie down or find another area. So the reason for the 5-day closure on the runway is because of the nature of the work. We first want to start with removal of the pavement markings, primarily the runway numerals and the thresholds. Granted, you know, they're already starting to fade right now, but in order for the seal coat to kind of penetrate the surface properly, you do want to remove the large markings. So first day will be removal of the markings on the runway, just the numerals and the thresholds. The second day is set up for doing crack repair. Now there's not many cracks on the runway that need to be repaired, but we did do an inventory and noticed there still are a few, so that allows the contractor 1 day to do that. And then there's 2 days for the contractor to seal the pavements, and then the final day would be to put the markings back on the runway. This way the runway's back up and operational. And then the other 5 days we have programmed for the project. The contractor will do the work in the hangar area taxi lanes, the apron, the rest of the taxiway, and then also the entrance road. So we're anticipating a 2-week project. Now that's, I think, on the high end of the time. Realistically, when the contractor is working on the runway, when the airport's closed, I could see them doing crack repair in other areas along the hangar taxi lanes, and also starting to do some of the seal coats. So it's going to be a short-term project with a lot of work that's being done with maintenance, but we want to make sure that we're not giving the contractor, you know, a month and they're kind of twiddling their thumbs out there. So I wanted to bring this to the commission, you know, first to see if anyone's got concerns about, you know, a 5 consecutive day closure of the runway, most likely to occur sometime next spring or early summer. You know, our plan is to let the project for bids here in early October so that we can get a grant from the state. We need to have open bids in hand. So we're going to request quotes because the anticipated amount is going to be below the public bidding amount for MnDOT. And then that way we can take the quotes to council in October, submit a grant application to MnDOT and then move forward with construction next year. So I know it's a lot of information. I'll pause for questions from the commission.
How will you let all the hangar owners know about the date of this? We've got a list, and Mr. Undum, might you want to chime in here? We've got a list of all the hangar owners and I assume their email addresses and contacts. Will you do that? Will Mr. Undum do that? How will that happen?
We will do it whatever. So once we receive the schedule from the contractor, we'll relay that information to the commission and to Mr. Undum. It can be posted on City of Forest Lake website. We typically do one-page newsletters that are posted on the terminal building there, anywhere else that you guys have forums that post it. So once we know the schedule, we try to get that at a minimum 2 weeks in advance from the contractor of when they're going to shut down the runway. And then we'll advertise that to as many people as possible. We'll obviously rely on you guys to let us know which forums people are looking at. You can't post a note on them until 3 days before. So that's where if the city, I don't know, Mr. Undum, if you have a listserv that you email the pilots to kind of give them a more advanced notice of a closure, whatever it takes to get word out, because it's obviously a busy airport and you don't want people, if they're not necessarily checking NOTAMs and they're coming in, they'll see closure crosses and they'll know they can't land, but kind of saves them some time.
Are those lit crosses?
There'll be lights on, so for evening time they flash.
Is it the parking lot, the public parking lot included in this too?
Correct.
Okay.
So right off of Forest Road there, everything from there, turn right onto the airport or turn left, whichever direction you're coming, all the pavement is going to be seal coated and crack repaired.
Anybody else? Any questions?
So with that, we'll be requesting quotes kind of in October, and most likely come the November commission meeting, we'll be able to present that information back to you guys. All right.
Silas,
go ahead.
I might have missed something, but you're going to do the runway itself first, and then the taxiway, is that the idea?
Correct. So the first phase is going to have the contractor work on the runway. So we expect all their effort to be on the runway. Now, the contractor may say, hey, while we're seal coating the runway, can we crack repair the other areas? So they may say we can operate a little more efficiently than what our schedule is going to allow it. So that's why I'm saying while the runway is closed, the contractor could very well work in other areas just to kind of accelerate the schedule.
I was just thinking if there's any time of the day after they're done working or whatever, if the taxiway would be available for taking off and landing.
The issue is the taxiway doesn't meet a minimum runway standard. So we can't, as part of the project, say that the taxiway Alpha is temporary runway 1331. I mean, I'll share my opinion with you outside of the meeting, but it's not something that we can actually designate and have the city say they're okay with it.
I'll tell you my opinion. I wish I would have had a runway that good when I was a kid. It was a lot less than that, and a lot narrower.
Yeah, I mean, I could share you stories of when the runway's closed, certain pilots just take off where they can, but it can't be officially designated as a temporary runway for that period of time.
We won't ask for official word.
That's music to my ears. Any other questions on that project?
No, thanks.
All right, so the next one, so as you guys know, the city and the airport is initiating a master plan and a airport layout plan update. There's a presentation that's in your packets. I'm not sure if it's showing up on your screens, and then on the big board here. So so this is kind of the kickoff presentation, so kind of the pre-meeting, because there's some data that Bolton and Mank we need to gather from users of the airport, the business community, members of the commission, members of the city. So we want to kind of do a kickoff to let you know what the purpose of the study is going to be, what the role of the airport commission, members of the public is going to be, and kind of some of the data that we use to analyze the airport and to kind of move forward with the planning part of the project. So we've addressed this before. So the purpose of the master plan is really to take an evaluation of the existing conditions at the airport, take a look at all the facilities that you have, the aircraft, the number of aircraft, the fueling system, kind of inventory, everything that you have there, and then also kind of initiate conversation with members of the community, the city, the county, users of the airport, and in order to plan the future development of the airport. Because what a master plan is going to do is it's going to identify 3 areas of development for the Forest Lake Airport. Kind of the short term, something that's more immediate within the 0 to 5 year time frame. Kind of the midterm, some projects that are a little bit further off with the 5 to 10 year. And then the long term plans, 10 to 20 years, what do you want this airport to look like? What type of facilities are you going to need? Obviously we're aware that there's kind of a more immediate demand right now for hangar lots, with paving of the runway. I think all of the lots that are currently available are accounted for. 3 have been built on. I know the other 3 are currently leased out. So you're going through substantial growth and kind of conversations with MnDOT Aeronautics. They really believe that updating of the master plan was going to help drive the future for the Forest Lake Airport. So what the final document will reflect is an updated airport layout plan, which is kind of the plan document that MnDOT and the city here use for development. The need for the master plan is, you can kind of see on the screen there. So the previous master plan study was completed in 2006. And since that time, the airport has built out the previous study. You've paved the runway, you've paved the parallel taxiway, you've constructed, most all of the hangars that are available in the lots there. So like I mentioned before, and like we've heard from the commission, the increased hangar activity is kind of a big proponent of trying to find other areas on the airport with which you can study for creation of new hangar lots. Now, feel welcome to stop me at any point here if you got questions on the slides. I know it's a lot of information in a short period of time. Something cool that Chris and I were looking at just last week is just in the hangar area alone, how much development has taken place since 2013. Now, every year Google Earth flies over the city of Forest Lake and captures the airport. So you can see kind of a history in the dates there from 2013 going to 13 hangars, the following year, 3 more built. 2015, another one. But when we get to the next page, you'll really see a difference with the investment that the city made in paving the runway, the development that has occurred. The year prior to paving was 17 hangars, and then 1 year later, you're at 19. This past year, you're at 24, with 28 that we had confirmed just by doing an inventory of the airport. And we also know a large corporate hangar is proposed to be constructed. So in a matter of this time next year, the airport's going to be at 29 hangars. Having a conversation with Mr. Steeler earlier, there's 3 other lots on the airport that are currently leased out, which it sounds like plans for those to be built out within a year. So you're looking at 31, 32 hangars that are going to be at the airport here, which is almost double since the time you had paved. Now that's great to hear, but also if somebody else wants to come in and build, there currently are no other private lots designated for development of a hangar at the airport. And that's kind of where we looked at kind of constructing additional taxi lanes to the south there, which is where MnDOT kind of had a conversation with Mr. Undum and myself about looking at a master plan study. So our primary objectives for the study of the master plan are, we're going to take a stab at doing the forecasting for the airport. So what forecasting is you look at the existing number of operations that are occurring at the airport, you look at the existing number of aircraft that are based at Forest Lake, and you take that data and you try to project, okay, how many aircraft are going to be based here in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So you can kind of get a realistic picture of how busy the airport is going to be, how many aircraft would possibly be based here, and how many operations are going to be occurring, because that can really drive, what kind of facilities that you start developing. Currently, runway 1331 is 2,700 feet in length. I know there's a number of folks that have expressed a desire to extend the runway past 3,000 feet, 3,500 feet to try to allow enough length for a corporate aircraft or some turboprops or possibly even a jet aircraft to base or land even at Forest Lake. So those are things that the study will evaluate, what type of runway length extensions to 1331 are feasible. The previous master plan got it out to 2,700 feet, so we'll look at future and possibly ultimate lengths. And then once we get all that data, the last part of it is kind of implementation, where we have conversations with MnDOT and the city granted, I mean, if money was no issue, yeah, you'd construct 5,000 feet, you'd build, 50 more hangar lots, but obviously, there has to be some sort of funding mechanism in place, knowing that the city may not be able to implement every part of the master plan, with local dollars. Try to take advantage of state funding that's available and try to see if there's other sources of revenue that we can generate for the airport, and try to document that in the study report to actually find some plan in place and to update a CIP that MnDOT would concur with and encourage funding for it.
Thanks, Silas. Thanks for having me. As Silas just kind of mentioned, the basic steps here of the master plan study process are outlined below here. This afternoon, we were out at the airport conducting the inventory. So we essentially just went around, took a look at all the infrastructure currently on the airfield, looked at the pavement, looked at the lighting, looked at all the structures, the buildings, the fuel facility, as well as any of the nav aids and such. So we got a good photo inventory of that, as well as updating the aerial image this afternoon. So the next kind of step of the master plan is to get the demand forecast, and this kind of starts with just the baseline. So how many based aircraft are there currently? What are the operations currently? And then from there, we can extrapolate out to actually determine where we think the use of the airport's going to be in, like Silas said, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. Based on what we see for users of the airport, we can then start to look at what you guys are going to need for facilities at the airport, whether this is, increased hangar space, increased runway length, increased apron space, kind of any of those options. And based on what we see and what we look at for the future, we'll kind of provide some alternatives to give to you guys as options to look at for the future, whether that's runway length options, building area options. We'll provide a bunch of layouts that you guys can decide on amongst yourselves that are viable options for the future. Then we'll kind of get into actually how you're going to implement these plans, develop a CIP, which Silas will talk about here briefly. And from there, the ultimate, when you guys actually decide on which alternatives you think would be feasible for the airport, we'll then turn that into the airport layout plan, which will be a document you guys will have to be able to show, if somebody comes and wants to build a hangar, this is the lots that we have available for hangar space. This is our plans for a longer runway in the future, any of those options. So you guys will actually have that document on hand to be able to know the direction of the airport.
Now, Chris did mention that we just did inventory out there, a number of photographs, a number of aerial photography, and we'll make that available to Mr. Undum. There is a GIS web application that Bolton and Mank hosts, so we'll update the aerial imagery for the airport to give you the most accurate depiction of that. And then there's a number of photographs we got there. I know all four of you guys have nice hangars out there that we have nice new photos for, so we'll make sure we share that information with you. And if anyone wants from the public, the plan is to put a lot of this information on the city's website. So one of the things that we talked about previous meetings is kind of the schedule for the project. We had said it's about a 12 to 18 month process from when we begin to end. And there's kind of 6 key steps that kind of go along with the schedule or the process that Chris just mentioned. So the first thing we just completed here in September is inventory. So the next time we'll plan to present to the Airport Commission meeting specifically about the master plan is at the December meeting. And at that time, our plan is to have aviation demand kind of forecast and then start having conversations with the commission and anyone else from the public that wants to attend about what type of facilities and kind of what other future development that the city and members of the community want to see for the airport. Once we obtain that information, we'll be working behind the scenes to kind of keep things moving for the study. In March of 2020 at the commission meeting there is where we're proposed to bring facility requirements to the Airport Commission for discussion there, to have some more detailed conversations about that. Based on the information we get from the facilities, The big meeting is really when we start talking about the alternatives, like Chris mentioned. That's where the development ideas are put to paper, the cost, the environmental impacts are all reviewed on the preliminary level. So you see all these different options of where development could take place, what the impacts are, what the cost impacts are, and then from there is where it really drives the conversation with members of the Airport Commission and the city about which ones of these options make the most sense to actually say this is our preferred alternative to finalize their master plan report and finalize their ALP so that everyone knows that, okay, the city is committed to development in these areas, if and when MnDOT funding becomes available. And then we'll develop the implementation plan, in September of next year. And that's just putting the development onto paper, developing more refined cost estimates, developing the CIP, having conversations with MnDOT about which years the funding may be available. And then the final step is submit the final report and the ALP to MnDOT and the city for approval and acceptance. So we'll keep updating this kind of as we go so everyone's kind of on the same page of where things are at with the study.
Silas, I got a couple of questions. You say you updated the aerial image. Is that something that you're going to upload to Google, or they have their own thing that they update images whenever they want to?
Actually, we'll go ahead and put it, you guys have an existing city GIS application.
Yep.
So we will upload that to your GIS application, so you'll be able to toggle on and off the image for the airport property right there.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't understand a GIS application, so where would I go to see that?
Okay, the city has a GIS application which we can provide you, we'll provide you with a web link for.
Okay.
Or you can ask whoever at the city manages that GIS application.
Okay.
It'll be something like gis.bolton-mink.com/Forest Lake. Off the top of my head, don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But we'll actually provide you with the web link, as well as we can provide you with a separate web link of just the imagery if you'd like. And with the city's GIS application on the internet, you'll be able to just look at any of the other city infrastructure. I'm not super familiar with the city's actual GIS site, but I would guess they have, sanitary infrastructure on there, water main infrastructure, such like that, off the top of my head, I guess. But I know, actually, the one part I am familiar with is we do have your updated airport zoning on there. So in addition to your airport zoning, we will also have the imagery that's updated for the airport property that was actually flown this afternoon, so.
The other question was, Dan, if you could just go back one slide, please. On the master study scheduled, you've got 6 little dots there. Is this something that you're only going to be reporting on during those particular months, or is this like an ongoing monthly report on the ALP as kind of a growing monster that you're going to talk about every month?
So what we're proposing is 4 specific presentations at the Airport Commission to have a more detailed presentation, something similar to this, but a little bit more in depth, where we'll be looking for feedback from the commission, members of the public that attend. So our plan is to have 4 of those meetings at points 2, 3, 4, and 5. So at those Airport Commission meetings, and we've had conversations with Mr. Undum about making it well known in advance so other members of the community, users of the airport can attend those specific meetings to gain more information about the planning study. Because we'll get into it a little bit here, but feedback from the public and the users of the airport is kind of critical towards the success of the master plan, because ultimately it's your guys' airport. It's your guys that want to make the development, so we want to hear from you. So that's the plan, to kind of have meetings at those months, Mr. Schmidt.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for these guys? You have more?
Yeah, we'll speed it up here a little bit.
No, that's fine.
No, take it.
No rush.
So here's just kind of the existing planning considerations figure that we like to put together at the beginning of the master plan. It just shows some of the ideas that we have to consider in moving forward with the master plan and airport layout plan process. So if you take a look on here, we show just the rough airport boundary based off the city parcels, as well as a couple areas. If you see on the west side of the field there's a potential for commercial hangar development over on that side. That's some city-owned property there. as well as a couple areas to the north and east, which are just kind of general hangar area development locations.
Why is that specifically commercial, that one area, and not general? I'm just curious why that is designated.
Nothing specific. I mean, it could be general as well. It's just if you're looking for, let's say a corporation wants to base here, multiple hangars, and then possibly operate a business from there, you'd kind of want them separated from the rest of the GA traffic. So it's just an idea. I mean, it's not going to say on the ALP this is specific for corporate, but it may have some larger hangar lots of, 100 by 100 type variety, so you can operate a business there as well. That's the only reason to.
Public access to.
Yep, and generally we will on the ALP, I mean, it's not set in stone, but generally we will have them slightly separated, as Silas said, to, there's an area that might be focused more on commercial development. But that isn't set in stone on this area, this was just a considerations figure to think about. So the other items you can kind of see on here is the potential for a runway extension to 1331. And we're just looking at this as an option. We'll know more as we get into the forecasting, looking at the based aircraft, talking about the user survey and kind of seeing what actually users are looking for at the airport here. As well as we just put the National Wetland Inventory on here, just to highlight that we know we are dealing with quite a few identified wetlands in the area. This would obviously have to be delineated further for construction areas, but it's something we want to keep in mind as we look at potential areas for development on the airfield. So public involvement. So as Silas mentioned, we'll have 4 meetings coming up. That's where we do want to get the public input on these. And I believe the next slide will actually talk about the users survey as well. But we want to represent everybody from the community and/or current users and potential users of the airport, and get their input on it. This is what's going to allow us to get the most accurate master plan, airport layout plan going forward. So if we kind of talk about the user surveys real quick too, this is something I know we'll get these out in the next couple weeks here. But we'll kind of have them split into 2 surveys. So a general user survey and a business survey. So this is where we're going to need some input from you guys too, as far as the methods and/or the lists of people that we can potentially send these surveys out to. So I think we had discussed having a link on the city website. So we will provide a link to it. However, we can also send out hard copies. But this is where if we can also get, if there's anybody that manages your basedaircraft.com list, if we can get a list of all the based aircraft on your field, that would be great. We'll send it to all the users that are currently on the field. We can leave some copies in the terminal building. We can send it to any other users around the area. So that's kind of for the user survey. For the business survey, this is where we want to send it out to any businesses in the community, whether they actively are utilizing the airport right now or not. They might have the potential to utilize the airport if if there was other items available to them, such as a longer runway or more corporate hangar space. So that's the type of stuff where we'd like to get it out to, we'd like your guys' suggestions to determine which businesses around would be most useful in getting the user survey out to for both businesses and individuals coming up. And we'll just, there's a little example on the side here, but just a lot of questions as far as, regarding runway length. Is the runway length adequate? Is the building area adequate? Is the fueling adequate? Questions like that will help us in turn drive the planning process for determining what we think the airport usage will be in the future.
All right, kind of some next steps, kind of as Chris alluded to, there is some information we'll be looking from the city. We'll email Mr. Undum, primarily like Chris mentioned, a list of the based aircraft that are out there so we know who's currently operating. The key is to try to get as many user and business surveys back as possible. We know there's 28 hangars out there, so there's at least 28 pilots that are there. And then there's also a number of others that are users of the airport. The more information we can get from user and business surveys, the better the planning study is going to be to kind of help plan for the future. Now, the business one is one where we'll have more conversations with you folks and Mr. Undum, and maybe if there's a community development or economic development person with the city to try to find out if you guys are aware of any business that you know for sure uses the airport that's from Forest Lake or the surrounding area. So we'll have those conversations kind of offline. Chris mentioned it, but everything that we do as part of the study is going to be available on the City of Forest Lake website. Previous conversations with Mr. Undum, he's going to just make those documents available on the City of Forest Lake website. Now, I do understand there is a specific Forest Lake Airport website, but it seems as though it hasn't been updated in some time. I don't know if you got an idea on that.
Yeah, so there's a webpage that was built, cityofforestlake.com/airport. That's where everything will be housed for the master plan. So everything related to the master plan documents, pictures, survey data, everything will just be on that one site. That's the city managed site. There is another website, but that's not under city control, so we don't actually update that one. So going into the city's website, I developed its own page, and it's cityofforestlake.com/airport.
Nice.
Everything will be housed there.
Nice.
So expect to see the user and business surveys available online, hard copies at the airport, and even mailed copies coming within the next 2 weeks here. And then from the information that we generate from the user and business survey, and then also from our inventory of the airport, review of the existing number of based aircraft here, we'll develop the draft inventory chapter of the master plan report. We'll draft the aviation forecast for the airport and bring that information back to the Airport Commission at the December meeting. And with that, any other questions or comments about the master plan? I know it's a lot to take, so we wanted to kind of kick it off here before we really get into the meaty parts of the discussion as we move forward.
It's a lot to think about right at the moment.
It's a lot to think about.
Feel welcome. My contact information is here. Feel welcome to contact me directly. Feel welcome to facilitate it through Mr. Undum. But like we said, all the information is going to be available at any time for review. And obviously, as members of the Airport Commission, we're looking for you to kind of support from your points of view, and then also other pilots or members of the community that you guys can speak for or even bring to the meetings would be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the study just to find out exactly where we stand with that. And it's a lot of that's going to get brought out during that time, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's definitely some pressure out there for more hangars, no question about that. So with anything we can do, I know it has to be done over time, but I'm looking forward to it, so thanks for that.
Yeah, I thought that was great to see kind of how many more hangars are built there since you paved the runway. That was kind of interesting.
And engagement of the community around the surrounding of the airport is going to be really key. I know Clear Lake has an association. I'm sure you can get an email list for that and contact every one of those people or get a survey out to them. And I imagine other communities close by, we can get
Yeah, I mean,
surveys
we've
out to them.
done-
I think it's pretty key to bring them into the process. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Chris has mentioned, we've done snail mail, we've done electronic mail, we'll place a number of them at the airport and have them just drop them in a box there. So we want to get as many responses as possible, and that helps drive it.
And we will have the link to the online survey too. It's actually an online survey. It's not they have to print something out, so they will be able to hit the city's airport website and link directly to our online survey, which will all get tallied in with our survey results.
Okay.
And then just the last thing.
Silas, before you go
Sure.
on, the main needs, I'd personally just like to see more T-hangers out there too.
Sure.
But of course, we always run into the problem of cost and so forth. This does really nothing to address that cost. It's still a conundrum. The hangars cost more than what we can afford
Yeah, the
to rent
issue
them
with
out for.
T-hangers is the
So
only
that's just-
funding-
This doesn't help
Yeah.
us that much with that then, is that correct?
It can identify areas to construct T-hangers, but it's not going to alleviate
Right.
the funding issue there where the city is only able to get a loan for the erection
Right.
of the building. You can get a site preparation grant to get you through the hangar floor. But then I know Mr. Undum has ran some numbers before, and it wouldn't cash flow with the rents you can get for an 8 or 10 unit,
Right.
just with the cost of it. So that's the
Okay.
unfortunate part.
All right.
far as I'm concerned, it's a dead issue because we just never been able to make the numbers work out.
Correct.
There's been more than one person working on it too, to try to make it work out, a couple of different contractors and that kind of thing. And other airports are having, the ones where they do have T hangars, they're not always full,
Correct.
so.
And then just the last thing, so we're getting to the point where if you want to identify any projects that you want completed in state fiscal year '21, so MnDOT's going to be looking for a revised CIP come February. Now, obviously, we're not going to be through the master plan, so it won't be the full-blown part of it, but, the project that didn't get funded this year with construction of the East Hangar area taxi lanes, MnDOT has said, well, we want to see what the results of the study are to see if you still want to construct taxi lanes in that area or somewhere else. So if there's any projects that you see further on the CIP that you'd like to move up, or if there's some other projects, something to think about, and we can continue that conversation through the next couple commission meetings, but we'll want to
So
know.
MnDOT's not interested in looking at that until this master plan is done?
Yeah,
Even
because-
though we have a waiting list of people who would lease every one of those lots? I mean, they're probably not aware of that. MnDOT's not.
Yeah, Mr. Undum has sent that information via an
Okay, they are
email.
aware of that.
But the issue with there is, in order to construct those east taxi lanes, if you recall, it required a sheet update to the airport
Right.
layout plan because all the taxi lanes were built. So that's where the back and forth with MnDOT was, well, we want to go through the full, they don't want to just do a short-term study, they want to, so that's why they've kind of mentioned, that when that project you may have to push back. So if there's any others that you guys wanted to move forward, that's where start thinking about, and we can have kind of those conversations in the next couple meetings. And any other questions, comments?
No? Anybody else? No?
Thanks.
All right, thank you, guys.
Next on the agenda is Chris Olson with his hangar plans, and I'm just going to ask Sam to update us on the process here. I've been on the commission for a year and a half, and since being on the commission, I haven't had a hangar come before me, so as to what our process or our purpose is in that.
Well, a little bit of history with Chris's project is that it was kind of a stumbling block here because it actually bypassed the airport commission because of the different lease and that kind of thing, and so thinking that it was all taken care of and it wasn't, so now we're back here looking at his plans. Basically, what we're looking for is color and that kind of thing, so somebody doesn't build a pink hangar and that kind of thing, and it's just looking at generalized, aesthetics more than anything. Now, a commercial hangar, all the private hangars, we required overhangs and that kind of thing. Commercial hangars are a little bit different.
So we're not talking about parking for employees. I remember when you came before the one time, those were kind of parts of the conversation, and I just want to make sure that we're not responsible for
No,
discussing
because-
any of those issues. Okay.
See, his building will abut the public area.
Okay, I just want to make sure we cover what we're supposed to cover and not go beyond it
And so their employee parking will be on the back side of their building.
okay. Okay, well, let's flip through the plans and see what we need to see here. Mr. Undum or Chris, I don't know who will direct.
Either's fine.
Okay.
And then Chris, I mean, you guys already went through with height restrictions and that kind of thing, or?
We did, yep, we have everything.
So you're
it's-
below the.
We are, actually, I
RPZ?
sent that to you from the FAA.
So just to kind of give an update where he is process-wise on outside of this approval, he's gone through the building, the plans have been reviewed by the building department, they've been approved to the building department. Zoning has looked at it and said there's no issues with it. So at this point, like Sam mentioned, you're looking at it pretty much from a design perspective. If you have any questions on the plans, you can feel free to ask the applicant, ask Chris questions specifically about the building. But this is more of a design review to make sure that it fits the aesthetics of the airport, that there's nothing going to be in conflict with what else is out there. And it is a requirement of any building that goes out there has to come before the commission just to make sure that there's uniformity in design at the airport.
That was a bit of a misunderstanding, so,
Okay.
because it had actually started out with the council on this particular one, so.
My first question, looking at the conceptual rendering, the slope of the roof, it looks like a much flatter slope than all the other hangars out there. I don't know if our architectural requirements have anything on there other than the snow load that it needs to handle. So that,
We actually have a private hangar out there that's got a fairly flat roof on it too. It was one of the first.
there
ones
is
built
one of them out
yeah.
there, I realize, okay.
It kind of escaped through the cracks there. And so,
But we're okay with that? Every-
you know, the thing of it is, and if you raise the pitch too much, then he's gonna get into that area where,
Into the airspace?
into the RPZ.
It's built so that it's under the airspace, but also you have to realize that it looks like that because it's 120 feet wide. So it's gonna
Okay.
look a lot more shallow than like a standard hangar would.
Well,
If you
yeah.
cut it in half and went with that same thing, it's gonna be fairly similar to the other hangars. And the snow loads, it holds the snow loads that we need here. It's above and beyond the snow loads because it's so wide. It's an all-steel construction building.
The word hangar is misspelled. It should be Hangar.
AR, yeah. Oh, well.
I move that we, do we have other pages of this?
That's
Nice.
the bottom floor.
Is that a King Air?
That's a King Air 350, just so you can get some size comparisons. You'll see a couple of A36 Bonanzas in there, a Piper Cub, and that King Air 350. And those aren't even close to stuffed, so you could,
A lot more than that. Is that the second floor then?
that's the second floor. It's just a back and side mezzanine. So really, we designed it so that it's storage, but just to make sure the occupancy was high enough so that there wouldn't be any questions whatsoever with their sack and whack fees, we put those in as offices. But that whole upper level is designed so that it could be a storage, you know, it's heavy enough. I think it's I can't remember what it is, like 130 pounds per square inch instead of like 65, which would be
square
what-
foot,
per square foot, which
yeah.
is what you'd have if you were just office space. That's all steel construction as well.
And the rest of it's all building code stuff. I mean, it's stairways and handrails and elevations and escape windows or whatever you need there. And that review is already taking place.
And that
right?
stairway on the outside, I mean, that's required for fire,
Yep.
must be, assuming, yeah. I mean, because that's an architectural look that doesn't exist on any other hangar out there.
So you've got a stairway inside also then?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Yeah, there's two in the back, and then if you click back to one of those other, if you look in the back on both sides, there's two stairwells in the back. There's fire exit doors all the way around the building, and then there's that front escape that comes down. And the reason that it's like that is because it's got to meet different requirements for distance. So those architecturally drawn.
Is that on the rendering too, that stairway? Go back to that.
No, I don't think it was.
I don't think it was. Go back to the, it doesn't exist there.
No, it didn't have it there. That's
Is
just,
that going to be a problem in proximity to the taxiway? Because it's going to stick out, what, 4 or 5 feet?
no, because we're actually, so the requirement, if you were to look at your FBO building, which you can kind of see there, whoops, go there, right there's good.
Yeah.
So you can see that goes from the side of the FBO building to the fuel pumps. The minimum requirement, that's an FAA mandate, and that's 50 feet. And if you go from the side towards our building, we go to 71 feet. We're 71 feet away, so we're way more than, much further away than
But
what
the
you're talking about.
stairway's out on the front side by the taxiway,
Yeah,
at
but
least
you're,
according to the architectural plan.
right. But that's, I mean, it's required a building code.
I guess I'm missing the 75 feet. Of the, where it says proposed hangar, between there and the taxiway, what's the distance there?
Between where on the taxiway?
From
The
the
front of that front
Well, the
door-
front of the building, the front of the building has to
Yeah.
be a certain distance from the taxiway. But
Right.
that doesn't alleviate having a fire escape.
But does that distance account for the stairs?
It
being
does, yeah. It's all got to be in there.
Okay, I just,
So
because
you're
it
measuring the
doesn't,
distance from the stairway to the taxiway?
From the building to the taxiway.
So the
yeah.
stairway's gonna be encroaching into that area?
Well, it comes down around the corner there. So you'd have to look at it from a different, so that was done with an architect, and then they used the rules from the FAA, and then they also called, I don't remember who they talked to. Remember who we talked to? That was Jerry.
So
I think that-
technically, the building needs to be set back the width of those stairs.
You can't. We can't move it. We went through that.
Dan, can you zoom in on A2 on the stair? I imagine it's a 4-foot wide stair, so I'm just,
Let me see if I can here.
I mean, there could be problems with the, FAA on a deal like that? Another.
4-foot stairs, yep.
I'll confirm all the setbacks of the building, like, and they've reviewed it, like I said, and they took into account the FAA standards that are out there. So I'll confirm that that's the case for them.
I'd like to just flip through the other pages, if we can zoom back out and just,
Those circles there that you see in there, those clouds or whatever that are around there, we actually went through as well, and we had to add other footing spots and everything. We went through, that was part of the requirements here.
As far as in front of the building, the asphalt or cement, whatever's gonna be there, that's all gonna be part of this design then?
Yep,
So that won't be at a cost to the city, it's all gonna be
No.
yours?
no. Yeah, we're required to put that 30 feet of cement in there.
It's a lot of cement.
That's a lot of cement.
can we just flip to the next? And we've seen that one, let's go to one more. What's your mezzanine? Yeah. Okay.
It's nice.
And that mezzanine is that all steel structured?
It's all steel.
Wow.
So it's a steel flooring in it and
Yep. Actually, it'll be a steel floor with a 2-inch mud base. I guess how that is. So there's nothing flammable in the building.
so it
That
won't,
doesn't need to be fireproof then?
Nice.
I mean, it still meets all the codes, but it's built above and beyond because it's a big building and we didn't want to take any chances. I mean, you don't want to try and run out of a building that's on fire, because you built it out of wood. This is a lot bigger building, so that's all steel construction. That mezzanine that you see up there, it'll have a mud floor, it'll have a concrete floor in it that's 2 or 3 inches, so
so it will not be sprinkled, the
No.
building?
it's under the requirement. The requirement's 14,000 feet, and we're at 9,600.
Don, I think that the stairway was a good call. I mean, it's a little bit of a concern, but they already checked the setbacks and,
I'll confirm it all with them, with building on that.
because, you know, you got the 30-foot setback where we all are. And you're taxiing, it depends the size airplane going by there. So,
Well, we have the biggest airplane and we won't come close to that thing. We have a Navajo that's about the size of that 350 in the wingspan, and you're not going to come anywhere near that. I mean, you're having a bad day. There's no, I don't see any airplane where you could even come close to that, even if you stretched it to 3,300 feet. I mean, never say never, but the bigger airplanes, or the biggest airplanes that I can think of that you could fly in here corporately, still wouldn't have wingspans that'll even reach that.
So as far as concrete or asphalt in front of your building, it's gonna be just to the width of the building?
Just to the width of the door.
Just to the width of the door?
So it'll be the door, there'll probably be a pad there where you see that small access door.
Right, so, I mean, it'll all be grass there, so the airplane would stay out of that area anyway?
Yeah, it's not gonna be a taxi spot.
Yeah, so the public would be avoiding that area anyway.
There's, right on that corner, I don't know if you can see that, I can't really get to it, but on the corner where the pavement is, where the pumps are, there's access there. I think there's electrical access right on the corner. So, I mean, at some point, there should be lights there anyways. There's no, you know what I mean, in the dark, I mean, you're,
To approve contingent on the city's review of the approval of that front stairway, distance from the taxiway.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any further discussion? My only further discussion that I wanted to ask is the color. Is that color in the rendering, the color?
it's supposed to be medium parchment with like a charcoal, so it should look something like that, yeah.
Okay.
It's,
With white doors?
I don't think the door's gonna be white, it's whatever they come out with, they give us a question, what does higher power come back with? It was whatever their standard color was.
No, they don't. They're just sending you the frame.
Yeah, so we gotta
So
paint the
you-
door, I think is what the deal was.
Yeah, you can buy whatever color steel that you want for it, It's
Yeah.
already pre-painted.
It matched, whatever it was.
Okay.
One other question, who's constructing the building?
So the contractors are here, it's Casey Gustafson Construction, and then we have several other contractors that gotta come in. We gotta get a steel guy to obviously come in and crane that, so. There's 170 tons of steel laying out in the field right now, waiting to go up.
When do you propose to get rolling on it?
We were supposed to today.
When that crane is, I mean, when it's in operation, is it a issue for aviation navigation? I mean, does it not encroach on space, or they just have to put out a NOTAM to pilots on that regard?
Yeah, they'd have, because a crane implies that they'd probably be above.
Right.
Yeah, probably be in the RPZ a little bit, which means it's a NOTAM.
Just a NOTAM.
And there's a form that they have to fill out with the FAA.
Okay.
We've already talked to Nate, so we have those forms, and then I've already talked to him. So when that contractor tells us, how big a crane they're gonna have, they'll tell us the maximum stretch on it, and then we just turn that in and they'll put a NOTAM out for it, and that's it.
So
That's something
They
they,
had to do that for that crane at the,
Yeah, at the
at the
building
apartments
there.
there.
yeah, that's not a,
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I will second it.
Well, we have 2 seconds. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
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 And all 4 ayes and 1 absent. So it passes and moves on back to the city council. Thank you.
all right, thank you.
It's already a done deal with council.
Yeah, it's gonna be a done
Okay.
deal. Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Others from the floor, our favorite item, which is others from the floor. We have no one. Don, you want to hop up there? Sure, Mr. Ship Senior.
I'm Don Ship, hanger on around there. I've had a couple questions forever with you guys. It never seems to get discussed at a meeting. How do we ever get this thing to move? I've got my contract violated, and we got a letter from the DOT that we got illegal operations out there that are not aviation, and they need to be changed, or otherwise we might be excuse me, we might be losing aid from the state, and neither one is the right thing to do. And I don't hear you guys ever talking about it or getting anything done. That lease thing has been over 4 years now. And then you have the gall to send me a past due notice on something that I don't owe. Let's get something done about it.
I understand. On the non-aviation business issues, we passed a motion, motion's on to the city council, and I think that was discussed last week, that was,
Yeah, we're trying to get this into a workshop where we can discuss it, because it's something that everybody on the council has to be educated on, and there's no question about that. And also, as far as the lease, the $280, that there has been some discussion between me and the administrator, and what we're gonna try to do is work this stuff into we're working on the new budgeting that's coming up right now, and so that's gonna be part of the conversation, and so we can figure that out.
it hasn't been forgotten, believe me. There are conversations going
It's-
on. To sit here in front of 5 microphones, there's not a whole lot we can say at this time. It is an elected body, and the elected body that's there now majority of them did not put, I don't think anybody that's on there now
No.
voted for that $280, yet they're the ones that now have to deal with it.
They all
So
know that,
it's not
right.
an easy task.
Yep, and they
as
all
it
know
may
it's an
seem.
issue, they all know it's an issue, and
Yes,
so
it
we gotta
hasn't
get
been
this to, public discussion, and then from there, it'll go to a regular meeting and then being voted on, and it's gonna be fed into the new budgeting year that's happening, coming up here, so.
Yes. Anyone else from the floor on anything? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I had
Oh, wait,
a
Mr.
couple of
Schmidt.
things. There is another airport website that's being reactivated. Mike Gumbold used to have ForestLakeAirport.com, and he used to just put out positive pictures of the kids flying at the airport and operations at the airport and so forth. That has since gone by the wayside. It has been rejuvenated, and it currently exists. I haven't been on the website yet. It's not an official airport website, of course. It's run by private individuals out at the airport. But I think the direction is going to be the same, is to put out positive images of the airport. So ForestLakeAirport.com does exist again. Number 2, there is an EAA chapter forming out the airport. You're probably well aware of it. I just want to put it in the minutes also. Members of the public who want to learn about airplanes would probably have a good opportunity to do so if they were to join that chapter. I think it's going to be a good thing for the airport. Number 3, I have also heard pressure about the $280 charge. I'm just reiterating that. I'm hearing that from airport users. And number 4, we had talked ever so lightly at the last meeting about possibly having an event out at the airport, and I think we're moving forward with that. But again, I think there's willingness by the pilots out there to consider that for 2020, and I think it'd be a good idea also. So those 4 items is all I had.
And I made that statement when we did the article in the paper too, and then, but by the way, there was some things that were misquoted in that article, so anyways, but, yeah, I'd like to see, an open house or something like that, like we used to do there.
Yep, yep.
And, get the public back involved again, so.
Okay,
I'd
Anything
like-
else?
I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
we are adjourned.